Welcome to Leadership Shenanigans, a podcast about leading, following, and running away. I'm Fiona Gherkin, the Principal Consultant at Little Things Consulting in Launceston, Tasmania. Welcome to Leadership Shenanigans, previously known as A Little Podcasting. That's why today is episode 5, even though it's the first episode of Leadership Shenanigans. And today I'm going to talk all about followership. You know, we talk so much about leadership, but I think we don't talk enough about followership because without followers, we don't have leaders, and we are not a leader without people who are willing to follow us. I'm a big fan of the Minions movies, and one of the things that I think those movies teach us is about followership. I have been known to previously use Minions in workshops to demonstrate working with difficult clients, but I think they also demonstrate that bringing together of a group of people willing to follow a leader. And in this case, that leader was Gru. So if you've watched the Minion movies, Gru is the big bad guy who wants to achieve world domination to some effect and be the best villain in the world. And without his many, many minions, it's not really clear how many there are, there's hundreds of them, he would not be a leader. And I think what these movies demonstrate to us is that clear message of leadership, which I think is possibly lost on a lot of the young kids that watch the movie. But the Minions demonstrate how followership is so important to Gru, because without that, he would not be able to undertake his bad deeds, such as stealing the moon, I think was one of them. He needs their help. And as a leader, you know, he's quite authentic, which is one of the key things about being a leader. You know, he does inspire the Minions, but he's also honest about when things don't go so well. And he inspires and motivates the Minions so much that he creates a sense of support for his deeds, for his bad deeds. I'm talking about in the first movie. And at one stage, he has to tell the Minions that he can't complete the task of stealing the moon because he can't borrow the money. And the Minions pool their funds together. They want to help him because as good followers and Gru as a good leader, he's created such support for his own mission that it becomes their mission as well. So when we're thinking about leadership and being a good follower is someone that will follow the mission of the leader, that will follow the same goals and with the same passion and help undertake those tasks to be a good follower. So if we think about good followers, they are those who add value. They add value to the work of the leader. And without them, the leader could not achieve what they're wanting to achieve. When we think about bad followers, well, they actually detract from the real work of getting things done. And I know I've talked about leadership and what it is before, but I wanted to just touch on some explanations of leadership that I found that I really liked. So the first one was from Dwight Eisenhower. And he said that the art of getting someone to do something you want done because they want to do it is a good explanation of leadership. And when we come back to the example of Gru and the Minions, they wanted to do it. They wanted to work for him. And he inspired them to do that work. And without that inspiration, you're simply not a leader. John Quincy Adams said about leadership that if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. I'm big on quotes, can you tell? But let's come back to followship. So that's leadership. I just wanted to clarify what leadership was because it kind of goes hand in hand with followship. I found a great definition of followership from the Holden Leadership Centre at the University of Oregon. They said that followership was a willingness to cooperate in working towards the accomplishment of the group mission. So followership is very much about being in part of a team, but also working together for the same goal. A show I really love to watch, and I know that I talk a lot about shows and movies, but I think we can learn a lot from characters sometimes because we can see them much more in depth than in real life because we see what happens in the background. And one other show that I really love in terms of learning about leadership is Parks and Recreation. It's an American sitcom or mockumentary, I think they call it. It's a pretend documentary about the Parks and Recreation Department. And there's a character in that called Leslie Knope. If you know it, you'll know who I'm talking about. But she's a very interesting character because she's a public servant who is extremely motivated to do so much and achieve so much. But she is a great demonstration of a leader. And although the people that work with her, she doesn't manage them, she does lead them because her boss is quite lazy, and so are a lot of her colleagues. But because she motivates them and leads them, they'll support her through so many things that she wants to do. Even Leslie's boss, Ron Swanson, who has mastered the art of doing nothing, seems to be managed up by Leslie and encouraged and inspires him. She does amazing things and makes him want to actually do some work as much as he tries not to. And she is someone that, she is a good leader. She motivates, she encourages, and she creates followers as a result without even trying. She's authentic and she's hardworking, and this provides, unintentional motivation for others around her. And she creates good followers because they want to follow her. They want to be led by her because she inspires them. So to be a good follower, you need to find someone who inspires you, who motivates you, who gets you off your ass without you even realising. However, not all leaders are fortunate enough to lead people who want to work hard. So what do we do with those people who, it doesn't matter how good of a leader we are, they won't follow? Well, in my opinion, you have two solutions. You find what motivates them and help them to achieve their goals, even if that means them working for somebody else. It might be about helping them transition to a different role or with a different employer. And secondly, it's important to remember that poor followers can sometimes often be poor workers as well, for whatever reason that might be. And, you can work hard to find the root of that issue, but sometimes it's about performance management, because continuing to force someone to follow you is not always useful, and it often provides little workplace value and is exhausting and takes away from the real work, and the real work of supporting those who want to be part of your team. I send it too often when managers and leaders are unwilling to deal with performance management because it either is too hard or they're unsure how to go about it. My advice is invest in your followers, inspire them to do things they enjoy in their work life, but also in their private life. Allow that flexibility if the things that inspire them are outside of the workplace, then allow them the flexibility to have time away to do that. Show them that you care and they'll give you the support and motivation you need to succeed. My advice, invest in your followers. Inspire them to do things they enjoy in their work and in their private lives. And if that means being flexible so they can go surfing in the middle of the day when the waves are good, then that's what you need to do. Show them that you care and that they will give you the support and motivation you need to succeed. However, not everyone is capable of being motivated. And sometimes that's not about you. Sometimes that's about them. Maybe you just don't gel or, it happens. It's a bit like a therapeutic relationship. Sometimes you can have a counsellor who's really good, but you just don't click with them and you just don't feel inspired by them. So maybe it's about supporting that person to move on and to find a leader that does inspire them. I was thinking about social media influencers and how their success relies so much on followers. They need to inspire people to increase their following, and really they're not an influencer unless they have followers, and I think it's over 10,000 plus. And this is the same with leadership. You're nothing without your following. And I was reading a study done on influencers by Olympic in 2017, which said that 43% of people globally followed influencers because they were authentic and they could trust them, which, interestingly enough, is the same for leadership. Authenticity and trust are key factors in being a good leader and being someone people are willing to follow. The study also found that 66% of people said the reason they followed an individual was because of the personalisation aspect and the similar interests with that person. Now again, this applies to leadership. You have to have a common goal. You have to have a common interest and drive towards that goal and investment in the workplace to be able to achieve it. If you're all passionate, you and your team are passionate about achieving the same goal, then that's where you'll head to. But also, if you are yourself, so that personalisation aspect as a leader, being yourself is so important, not being fake. And, it's interesting because that's the same thing people pick up on in influencers on social media. I think we can learn a lot from why people follow leaders and influencers on social media, because when you think about it, as a leader, you're an influencer. That's exactly what you are. And in terms of working with young people, I think that's going to be more and more relevant when we're trying to inspire people to lead us. If you're unable to influence others in a positive way, they'll not follow you. And I think the only difference is between a social media influencer and yourself would be that you don't have a counter that tells you whether you're doing well or not and how much influence you're achieving. It's far more qualitative rather than quantitative. So you don't have that number, but you can determine that through other ways. You can determine that through interactions with people and whether someone's listening to you or they're actually motivated. You have to keep tabs on what's working and what's not. Look for social cues and behaviour of people around you. Are people actively completing tasks? Or are they on Facebook being influenced by someone else who has the latest handbag? All these things are really relevant. And I think understanding, social media is, funnily enough, does have an impact on leadership, because influencers, I think, are the leaders of the 21st century, sadly. And not because of what they do, because of why people follow them. I think that's, as a leader, that you can take away from that. Not so much what they're doing, it's why are people following them? What is it that attracts people to become their followers and to want to see their content? And it's the same as a leader. What makes people that work for you, that follow you, want to see what you deliver and want to see what you bring to the table? There was an article in Forbes magazine published in 2016 by Rob Asgar called "Why Followership is Now More Important Than Leadership." And I'll leave a link to this article in the podcast description. But I did draw on that some key points that he did pull out about followership, which I thought were really important to share. So followers need to also be nurturers. They need to be people that are willing to nurture the follower leadership relationship. Good leaders need to be nurtured. Narcissists don't. And that's the difference. Because, we do get the odd narcissist in leadership, the odd psychopath. So if a leader is a bit vulnerable at times and needs nurturing from their followers, then that makes them genuine and authentic. Give generous but honest feedback. That's important too. Leaders need honest feedback. When I worked with my team, I would always say to them, what can I do better? I think it's important to ask that and be willing to ask that. You need to remember that leadership and followship are a dance. One leads, one follows, but without each other, neither is a leader or a follower. It's important to remember too, Rob talked about that the leader does not necessarily need to be more skilled. They just need to be inspirational. You can have a team that are more skilled than you and still be a good follower, but it's about using those skills and not discrediting those skills because you're intimidated by them. Because a skilled follower helps an inexperienced leader to shine. So as a leader, you need to see that as an asset, not a disadvantage. It's not a competition. I'm going to leave you with one last quote written by Travis Bradberry. He's an author from Talent Smart and he writes a lot of articles on leadership. And if you have a chance to read any of his work, I quite enjoy reading some of his articles. And in an article he wrote called "Are You a Leader or a Follower?", which was published in 2015, he wrote, "A leader is only as good as what he or she can achieve through other people." And I thought that was just so perfect. It is a team effort. It's not all about you if you're a leader. And as a follower, you are doing just as much work, if not more. So be a good minion, be a good guru, inspire and live through someone like Leslie Knope from Parks and Rec, and be a good follower. Thanks for listening to Leadership Shenanigans. For all my social media, you can click on the links in the description of this podcast. If you have any questions or comments or wish to recommend a topic, send me an email or comment on this podcast. Don't forget to check out www.littlethingsconsulting.com.au. I look forward to having you join me next time.